Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today with Soul Sebastian. Welcome, Soul.
Hey. Good to see you, girl.
And we are going to talk about some really interesting things today around sexuality, around Jungian psychology and what you call the anima. We're going to talk about power. We're going to go all over the place. And Soul has been working with men since the mid-90s in the context of leadership and power and sexuality. And so he's the perfect man to have this conversation with. So Soul, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Shana. It's really fun to be here with you. I love what you're doing and I love the work you're doing and what you're bringing out for men. I think it's a great site you have and some great messages on it. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Cool. Thank you. So I was reading an article of yours in which you wrote that there is a socio-sexual political rhetoric around men and sexuality, and that men are losing connection with their anima, and that this is a big problem. And so I'm wondering, for men who don't know Jungian psychology and where this all comes from, can you give us a lay of the land of what is the anima and how does it actually impact a man's sexuality and all of that?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start by saying that, I've since the mid-90s, I started working with men on sexuality, relationships, longevity, with a strong basis in Qigong and lots of solid sort of hormonal practices and yogic practices. And then eventually that turned into me working a lot with transpersonal psychology and men's issues at large. And now the greater part of my work is around leadership and men out in the world. And I do mostly private work. I don't do a lot of public group work. Most of my work is private and sort of high-end private work. And so it's funny that I feel like the Ouroboros who's come back full circle to right now coming back to talk about sexuality, men and sexuality, which is sort of a subject I sort of wanted to get away from, but it's sort of like...
But you're revisiting it. It sounds like it's coming back up for you.
Yeah. Well, there's so much going on in the political landscape now, and there's so many men who are just desperately calling for some real solid wisdom in this area that I just feel really called to come back to it. And it's sort of good timing because it's been a long haul of interest of introspection and discovery and
Well, and one of the things you wrote that this might actually give us a really good place to start. So one of the things you wrote that I think will make this more concrete for men is that you wrote our dependence on women, or, if you're heterosexual, to entertain or stimulate our passions are rendered obsolete when compared to the exquisite beauty of our dreaming mind. And when we're disconnected from this, we unconsciously project our anima onto mortal women and give our power away by virtue of this externalization. So I think we could unpack that for 12 days. But why don't you take a crack at it?
Jesus, I was going on a bit of a bender there. Yeah. Look, part of what I've become really aware of in the past, decade and working with definitely some high-powered men is just how much, how disconnected men have become with their dreaming mind, let's call it.
And tell me what you mean by dreaming mind.
Well, their access to original thought, their access to their let's call it the anima, as Jung called it, the anima, which is let's call it the non-binary essential mind, feminine mind projected out into the universe.
Okay, I think we still need more for men who don't.
Yeah, I'll unpack it.
Okay,
I'll continue to unpack it. Yeah. So you could call it the muse. Yeah. Uh-huh. You could call it the creative muse. And Jung was quite strong. Jung was actually more of a mystic in my mind than just a straight up psychologist, psychotherapist. He was actually more of a mystic, and you really get a sense of that in his alchemical writings, which is pretty much a strong foundation in my work. And the anima, let's say, is like, let's call it the muse or the essential mind or your link to the superconscious, where you're not caught up in political rhetoric, you're not caught up in the addictive mind or the compensatory mind or the conditioned mind. It's the mind that is connected to all things in time and space. And it actually reveals itself to you in, let's say, as a muse, let's call it. It's something that can communicate with you that's sort of like a transpersonal state, let's call it. And so most of what I see happening at the moment is especially when you look at the socio-political landscape, is just a shit ton of noise.
Yeah.
A shit ton of political rhetoric that at some point I just can't hold it down. I literally want to throw up when I start. Yeah. If I open Facebook for 1 second and look at some of the dialogue that's going on and, some of the rhetoric, that's the political rhetoric and definitely the real leftist political, socialist politically, PC rhetoric and all the shaming and blaming and all the anti-masculine sort of toxic masculinity memes that are out there, I just go, wow, we are lost in a thick haze of noise, of socio-political, let's call it socio-sexual political noise.
And so I think you and I both have a sense, we both have strong spiritual practices. And so we have a sense of, I think, what being outside of that noise is, or kind of being underneath that noise. But for men who this is just, they live in the world, in the culture, and it's kind of the norm out there. Do you have a way that men can get a sense of what it would be like if they weren't living stuck in that noise and, as opposed to what it's like being stuck inside of it?
Sure. Well, first, I would say that men need to wake up to the fact that their balls are in the hands of some very powerful, psychologically invasive technology. That their life force, their very potency and their very life force is being highly crafted and let's call it herded, like we're herding cattle. Their sexual energy is being herded into areas that isn't in their best interest, and definitely not in the best interest of their highest mind, their essence, their essential nature.
Media, advertising, porn, through all of that.
Well, through all of social, like the technology itself is becoming so pervasive, and not only the technology, but also the political rhetoric in universities, the witch hunting, the male, the whole red pill. There's a whole political sort of aspect. There's a whole legal aspect to it. there's many aspects to the harvesting, or let's say suppressing even, of either the harvesting or the suppressing of male sexuality in ways that aren't really in line with a man's sovereign essential nature. So his sovereign nature, his essential connection to his highest self.
Okay, so that helps me there too.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, so there's something in a man's sexuality being connected to his highest self as opposed to all of this noise. Is that a distinction that's...
Exactly, yeah. It's being co-opted and sort of herded by some very invasive technologies and agendas.
Yeah. And so it sounds like from what you're seeing, right, it's like when a man's sexuality is disconnected from these deeper parts of himself, or like you said, his dreaming mind or his anima. Another thing you wrote is that, we start hungering for what is lost and projecting our needs onto the opposite sex, again, if you're heterosexual, as if they become the exclusive source of your fulfillment. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, look, let's look at something like, I'm gonna risk really pissing some people off here.
Okay, do it.
But I'm gonna say it, right? So let's look at polyamory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and you could also say tantra, or you could say a whole bunch of, let's say, idealized versions of sexuality. And there's truth to polyamory, and there's a certain truth to polyamory, and there's a certain truth to tantric practices, and there's a certain truth to all these different ways of expressing sexuality. But for the most part, what people are attaching to is an ideology.
Of what?
Whatever, an ideology of something. And so their sexual energy is caught up in an ideology, a political ideology, or a social ideology.
Can you give an example of what one of those might be?
Yeah, so here's an example. I'm always confronting this question around polyamory, and I meet a lot of younger guys, often in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, who are like, just want to throw everything away. They'll have a great relationship, but they won't see it. They'll throw it away because all they want to do, because they're attached to this idea of polyamory, that they need to fuck as many women as they can and get around. Now, part of me questions, is that real? Is that true for this person, or are they just following some sort of ideology that's sort of in vogue at the moment?
Uh-huh.
And for the most part, what I see is just a lot of men who haven't had healthy individuation.
Yeah.
They haven't individuated in a healthy way. So so they're caught in a circle of compensation and they're using the feminine realm to compensate for what they're missing in terms of their individuation.
So they're missing something inside of themselves, or finding their own strength, their own power, and then putting it outside and looking to relationship and sex to fill that. Yeah,
and polyamory is one co-opted idea that fits that really well.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, it doesn't mean that polyamory is not a valid path if it's done from a place of from the standpoint of a man who has had healthy individuation.
Well, okay, this is awesome. Which is like, how would a man know if that desire was coming from a healthy place or if it wasn't?
Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. So let's use an ancient Mayan proverb, which I often refer to because it's so foundational. Is they said the woman's role, and again this is gonna piss off a lot of gender people caught up in gender politics, but the woman's fundamental role is to show the child that they belong and they are loved on an essential level, and for that reason, the valley it's like, and they call that the valley, right? So the valley is where the son or the daughter, for this matter, knows and understands that he or she is loved and accepted and worthy just for their very existence.
Mm-hmm.
Just just the sheer fact that they exist, that they're worthy, they're loved, and they're enough, right?
Yep.
And now the man's role, or the father's role, is to take the child to the top of the mountain, to separate them from the valley, to see themselves as distinct and separate from the mother or the valley, and see that they actually have autonomy, that they have access not just to the valley, but the whole world in order to resource themselves. And so they're not relying on mum, they're not sucking on the tit of mum anymore, and they're actually now, their love is the earth itself and the sky and all things between them. And so they're sourced as an independent health, as an individuated being that knows exactly who they are and what it is, knows what their capabilities are, their capacities, and what it is they truly want. And they go and get that.
Awesome. Those two things too, that knows their capabilities and knows what they truly want. Those feel important.
Yeah. And when I say truly want, and what they truly want from an essential point of view, not what they desire from a compensatory or what they're trying to make up as a lack from a lack of.
Yes.
So it's a very distinct. When I say what they want, it's what they want from an essential place. You know?
Yeah.
And so you get these men who haven't really made that, who haven't had that ability to who haven't had access to that healthy individuation. So they're caught around, they're in the valley still, trying to, and they have a sense that there's something missing. They have a sense that there's some greater meaning to their life than picking up more women and trying to get more women, or trying to resolve their sexual tensions or resolve their addictions. That there's something that has much more meaning outside of it. So they have a sense of it, but they don't quite know what it is. And so they get caught back in the valley, get swept back into the valley, and just start to play out their addictions and devices, and you know, whether it's through porn, through drugs, through multiple dating, through just getting off on as many women as they can, or whatever vehicle it is that they help them to sort of numb themselves out from this deep sense that there's something missing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, one of the things.
So that's what I'm saying. That's part of what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if it might help to contrast it with something else you wrote about, kind of the other side, right? Like what happens when a man is coming from this essential place. So one of the other pieces of your article, you wrote, when men and women are fulfilled on a fundamental level, they can actually see each other for their uniquely complementary nature as whole beings, able to bring a gourmet offering to each other, and not merely, the scraps or the cheap desires or the red ocean of commodified love and sexuality. So what I'm curious about is, what do you see as the gourmet offering or the red ocean that some men, like, you're going to give men a glimpse into something that they may never have seen or known was possible before?
Okay, good. Okay, yeah. God, that was cool. I like that.
You like what you
remember writing that now. Yeah, I like that. That sounds good from on the other end of the
good
audio. So just to be distinct, the gourmet offering is when, the red ocean is when man is in that survival place, when he's like competing in this space of competition, of trying to beg for scraps from all the other competition that's around him, whether it's financial competition, whether it's social competition, whether it's competition over the woman he wants, or the status that he's looking for. That's what I mean by the red ocean, as opposed to a blue ocean where you're just, the world is your oyster in a sense.
Right.
Now a man who has sourced from a very sovereign place, when he has a very visceral, immediate understanding that he is sourced from the world, that he is sourced from meaning, the meaning he has in life, that he is perpetually, that he wakes up in a perpetual state of inspiration and driven by a deeper sense of meaning in the world. That exists outside of the circle of, let's call it the feminine, or the sex and relationship circle, or the domestic circle. It's outside of the domestic home circle. It's let's call it the great expanse, let's call it, where he's standing on top of the mountain looking out at the great expanse, and he's inspired and lifted by a sense of meaning and purpose that exists independently of the feminine.
Uh-huh. Then what happens? This is what I want to know. Then what? Then I mean, I have my own version of this.
Yeah, well, when he has that, he's no longer a beggar. When he comes back down from the mountain and he comes back into the valley, into the realm of the feminine, he brings gifts with him.
Uh-huh.
And that might mean financial gifts, because he's sourced himself in the world. That may mean the gift of his potency, because he's had time to enrich his potency and his yang energy. Mm-hmm. It might mean spiritual energy. It might mean his ability to see further and to share news of the great world out there. To maybe he's a connection with the greater spirit, and to bring a sense of deeper wisdom and insight into what's happening in the valley. Mm-hmm. From that perspective, it may mean many things, but at least he's bringing, a sense of potency, a deep sense of spiritual potency and real. And that translates as actual physiological and energetic potency. It's not just spiritual. It's a deep sense of male potency that he brings back to the valley as a gourmet offering.
Yeah,
and that's what I mean. It's like a beggar's. It's like a king's banquet as opposed to a beggar's ball.
Well, right, and the way I talk about it or think about it, and it's hard to describe, like the realms of sexual pleasure and intimacy and connection and just feeling, not only being given, but also being able to be heard and understood and cared for, like all of those things that get to happen when these deeper levels are being accessed. I think it's hard to describe them. It's hard to paint that picture, as much as I keep trying.
From which point of view are you saying that it's difficult to paint that picture?
It's difficult to say, like, oh, okay, so right now you're having sex and it's about this release, this addiction, this tension. So yeah, like it's okay. It's physically, it feels pleasurable. You get off, you release. But when you come down from the mountain with these offerings, right, you start to have access to the capability to create, a night long of orgasms and passion where both people are not only physically unwinding, but also spiritually and soulfully, and right? Like, I'm curious how you talk about that.
Well, let's go there. I mean, you're relating specifically to sexuality, which is
right, and it can go beyond that, of course.
Well, of course, but that's really. I mean, it is valid as well what you're saying. I mean, it relates to everything, and so let me frame it. Let me sort of illustrate it in this way. I'm actually soon to be running a 21-day challenge for men, like a solo cultivation challenge for men.
What did you say? What cultivation?
Solo cultivation practice for men. A 21-day solo cultivation challenge for men. And basically what that looks like is no sex, no porn, no women, no domestic, no feminine realm whatsoever. It's you out in the world, completely detached from the socio-sexual, relational realm, detached from masturbation, no porn, no nothing. He's sourcing himself from something different than the addictive nature of sexuality and women and vice of any description. So it's not just that, but it's any vices, TV, gaming, like
online
alcohol,
news,
if that's a vice, pot, if that's a vice, online news, social media. Like it's getting him to cross that threshold of all those vices that just keep pulling him back to this limited self.
Yeah.
And to start to, and then added to that is some certain, practices and visualizations and processes by which he reestablishes a link to his higher nature in a very natural sense, not a woo-woo sense, but a very pragmatic sense. And now, one of those things is And the gift and what happens in that solar cultivation practice is, on many levels, he becomes grounded in his essential state. Mm-hmm. But one of the aspects of that grounding nature is on a physiological level. So in that time, we do practices to help build up his nervous system, and what I call holding energy.
Yes.
And let's call it a strong, where his ability to be a conduit to strong sexual power and energy becomes stronger. So instead of having let's say a little low voltage fuse wire, low amperage fuse wire, he's got a big thick cable in order to channel a lot more energy in his life. So that when he comes back to actually having sex with a woman, he's able to hold a lot more capacity and holding energy for his orgasmic nature, so it doesn't just leak off him as soon as he starts having sex. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And now what that does is, for the woman, is that allows her to feel a lot more stability and trust for the man, mm-hmm. On a limbic and visceral level, not just a concept, not just a socialized level, but she feels a sense that he has something more resilient to push against.
Right, which helps us open and relax and feel more pleasure.
Which helps her open and realm. Open, exactly. And so a lot of what I see a lot of rhetoric around this. I see a lot of, stuff around men being more present and being more ability to hold space for women to get in touch with their feminine. But for the most part, it's a concept. I see it only explained as concept. I don't see anyone really talking about it in terms of an actual physiological, energetic practice. Huh. And not only an energetic practice, but an existential practice in how he relates to the life itself.
So tying that physical practice to the existential practice.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Instead, it just becomes a socialized rhetoric. It becomes just like another sort of thing that men have to do. Oh, here's another thing where men fail, or here's another thing men have to do. And so they go, yeah, I want to do that, but not given any indication to how to do that, or what that looks like on a energetic, physiological level, and what that looks like on an existential level. Yeah, they're not sort of given like a lead into what that looks like, and often the men will try and resolve those issues within the relationship instead of getting out of the realm of relationship and finding it independently from an individuated state. And so he's caught in this sort of like, game of like, do I score points, honey? Did I do well? And she's like, oh, yes, sort of, and yes, oh, no. And there's this constant sort of virtue signaling and like question whether it's really working or not, and undermined by this deep, a persistent sense of dissatisfaction, and so eventually they
kind of that emptiness and that loneliness of actually not really being able to be connected, or like you said, like asking for permission or asking, am I okay, versus really knowing.
Versus being okay and knowing you're okay, and knowing that from your own individuated state. Yeah. Exactly. So it's an issue, and I have a lot of compassion for men in this realm, because we've been given I think a lot of what's being shared, a lot of what's being taken on from men is just more ways in which they fuck up.
Yeah.
It's being taken on as more ways in which they're not performing well, or
they're not living up to that.
They're not living up to some
standard.
or let's say some expectation set by the feminine. Yeah. Which is, and again, I might piss off a lot of people here, which is an inexhaustible, a woman can and really exhaust a man emotionally. They do have the capacity to play with the hearts of men, because men's hearts are vulnerable hearts. They're as tough as men try and be. They have vulnerable hearts that are highly susceptible to being manipulated. And women, either consciously or unconsciously, can play that card ad nauseum, and can keep men in a permanent state of shame, of not being confident in themselves, and being in a disempowered state.
Right. When they're trapped know what they're doing. Realm, like you said, of not actually being connected to that deeper place in them.
Well, that's right. And you know, and it's, look, if a man hasn't claimed himself and sought for that healthy individuation, whether he's got to find himself or whether it's given to him by healthy fatherhood, by his father or his father's fathers, whatever, if he hasn't found that healthy sense of individuation, he's definitely going to be at the mercy of a woman's vices.
Yeah.
And look, we've all heard of toxic masculinity meme. We've had that drilled into us ad nauseum as late. And, you know, very few people want to talk about the toxic feminine meme. And it has something to do with this.
Both exist.
They both exist. In fact, there's nothing to do with femininity and masculinity. It's just toxic.
Yeah.
People can be really toxic. and men and women can both be toxic and really consciously or unconsciously manipulate and seek power from the other to compensate for a deep sense of invalidation or low validity.
So, okay, I think we could keep talking about this for a long time, but, you know, we're almost at the point of wrapping up. So let's just see, you know, if there was, as we're just getting into this, if there was one thing that you wanted men to take away from this conversation, right, that could open them to this new understanding or access to new parts of themselves, what would that be?
Okay, good. Let's cap this conversation nicely. Two things. One thing is just become aware of just how powerful technology is. It's not a small thing. It's extremely invasive on a neurological level. It's reaching into and it's not just coming into your brain. It's reaching right into your brain, right into your limbic system, right down into your cock. It is grabbing you by the balls and it's leading you in places you don't want to go. So you need to wake the fuck up to the devices, to the social device, the devices and vices that are being impinged upon you through these technologies, and really take some time to step back from them every now and again and just go, hang on a minute, who the hell am I? What is my essential nature, and what is being fed to me through this social political rhetoric that's just this noise? So that's number one. Rise above the noise and tap into who you actually are.
Nice.
And two is don't look for it in relationship. Don't look for it in sexuality. Don't look for it in all the vices that you usually turn to resolve your dilemmas. Find it outside of those realms. Get out of the house. Get out of the relationship. Leave your dick alone for a moment. Leave porn alone.
I love that.
Leave your vices alone for some time. Get out into the world and ask the tough question: who am I and why am I? Truly, what gives me meaning in life that transcends all the political rhetoric, all the socio-sexual rhetoric, all the needs of women, all the things that I feel, sort of all the ways in which I feel like I'm letting the women down or letting my family down or blah, blah, blah. Get out of all of that realm. Go to the top of the mountain, find yourself, man, find meaning, and then bring that back and make a stand for that, and then bring that back as a gourmet offering.
I love it.
Those two things.
Hot.
Do those two things and you'll go a long way in life.
Awesome.
So trust me on that.
So, okay, great. And, you know, I appreciate the guidance for men and the suggestion of, like, you know who you really are and get away from the noise and, you know, go deep inside yourself and figure this out instead of looking to the external. I think this is, it's interesting how a lot of my podcasts lately, whatever the topic, it might be money, it might be sex, it might be anything else, health. It's like, it keeps coming back to the same deeper place. So if you've heard these questions before, you know, now's the time to actually take them on and really answer them. And how would a man find you if he wants more of you?
Well, it's a good question because I've been so involved with my
You've been hiding
one-on-one. Well, I've sort of been hiding. I got to be honest. I've been hiding. The whole political landscape is so it just is so, it's like, I just don't want to deal with it. I want to deal directly with men heart to heart in a way that I can actually affect change and not just get caught up in a shit fight, in a political shitstorm.
Yeah.
That's the way I do my work. I am actually going to be opening up a group, a private group for men who are going to be selected to be a part of that private group. So you can write to me at soul@newalpha.men. That's soul, S-O-L, at newalpha.men. That's NEWALPHA.men. soul@newalpha.men. You can write to me and just talk to me straight up, like directly, and I'll actually communicate with you, because I'm going to be opening up a private course to the 21-day solo cultivation challenge to men soon.
Awesome.
Very soon. That's going to lead into a whole bunch of really cool stuff. But that's going to be the starting point.
Great.
So just write
thank
to me,
you for making yourself
connect with me directly. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being so direct and personal with that. And thank you for having this important conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you for your work you're doing, girl. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's great. It's great what you're doing. Thank you so much. The men appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.